Welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I'm so glad you're joining me today. I have a special guest. Her name is Carla, and she is a teacher at Logos School. How many years have you been teaching?
23.
A very long time. She is a veteran. She can teach all of us younger teachers a thing or two. I'm going to let her introduce more about herself. Welcome, Carla.
Well, thank you, Bess. This is going to be fun. My name's Carla, and I've been married to my husband for a long time. Dale was a Navy officer, so our first duty station was in Orlando, Florida, and that's where I learned how to be hospitable. We had an Officer Christian Fellowship Bible study in our home every Friday night.
Wow.
For students at the Naval Nuclear Power School that was in Orlando at the time. And every 6 weeks, a class would rotate out, and we would make a big barbecued chicken dinner with homemade ice cream and then anything else I could throw at the guys to eat.
This is as they were
every
leaving?
6 weeks when a class would graduate. So that's how I got my start, with feeding 22-year-old guys, most of whom I will not see again on this side of eternity, but getting to share food and fun and fellowship. And they were mostly single guys, so they ate everything. Everything.
It was their first home-cooked meal in potentially 6 weeks. If they were eating on base, it was probably just whatever slop was in the kitchen.
Quite likely.
The mess hall, is that what it's called?
Sometimes, yeah. But yes, I got my start as a very young wife in hospitality, and we've just kind of gone from there.
Wow, that is so brave of you. What made you, did you grow up in a home where your mom was hospitable, or what made you realize the need for that?
I didn't grow up in a home where our home was open for hospitality. We had a very small home, and it was a bit cluttered. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't open our home much. We were usually going to the other cousins' homes for big dinners and things. But our church had big potlucks, and that was not uncommon. And when we did get together at grandparents for big dinners, that happened about once a month. So
that's fun.
Yeah, one of my grandmothers lived a mile straight behind us. And then my other grandparents were in a larger city, but they moved to our town when I was a teenager, so they could be closer.
So you enjoyed all of those experiences a lot, and it probably made you realize, I want to repeat this. And if you knew her personality, you would know why. Well, she has a great personality. She's very giving. She's very outgoing, and students love her.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, when you serve, you could think back to a menu you served all of these 22-year-old guys, or you can do something more recent. What menu would you serve to a large group of dinner guests?
Well, I'm not a real fancy, schmancy gourmet cook. I was raised on a farm in Illinois, and I like basic down-home cooking. And I have a recipe that my sister-in-law, Mickey, gave me called pirate chili.
Ooh.
And
22-year-olds would love this.
Oh, this has been a favorite at our table. And so it's good for guests. It's good for college groups. You can dress it up. You can dress it down, eat it in front of the TV for football. It works out just great. Very flexible, easy to expand, easy to reduce.
Okay.
Freezes beautifully.
Oh, nice.
So for
you
leftovers.
Make it completely and then freeze it.
Exactly. If there's leftovers, I freeze them and then break them out another time.
Wow.
And they work great.
Okay, I'm looking at her recipe, and one of the things that stands out, which I have never seen in a chili recipe, is there are peaches in here.
Yes.
So that would give it a touch of sweetness.
It does. And there's also rum.
Rum is in here as well. This looks so interesting and delicious.
It is really tasty. And it's a basic chili. You just, instead of hamburger, you're using sausage. Instead of kidney beans, you're using black beans. You have the basic tomatoes and chili spices. that go in, but you also have peaches and rum, which as it simmers, the alcohol content cooks off. So it's just the flavor.
Right. Oh, that sounds delicious. And the other thing I'm seeing, one of our shortcuts, is you can do just canned black beans, or you can simmer your own if you want to start from dried beans. But
exactly.
A quick thing to do is just throw in the canned beans. What do you serve this chili with?
I like to use a buttermilk cornbread recipe.
Buttermilk cornbread. Buttermilk really does kind of set it over the top.
It does.
I don't always do that. I think my traditional, the one that I make is called Southern cornbread. I think it has milk, but buttermilk, I might need to set that in.
It's really moist. It's a sweeter, moister cornbread than some. And so it's quite yummy. It goes well with the pirate chili.
Mm-hmm. And maybe people would like the sweeter cornbread with the chili.
It's an option.
What about, I see on here it says cornmeal. Do you just use the standard cornmeal in the store?
Standard cornmeal, standard flour.
Okay. I know some recipes call for like the, what's that coarser grind of cornmeal? Maybe coarse ground cornmeal.
Right.
I don't know. There's a term for it I'm not thinking of, but just standard
basic
cornmeal and flour. Okay. Anything else? So you serve chili and cornbread? Are those
salad.
You can do salad.
Cookies for dessert, something like that.
That sounds amazing and perfect for any group coming over. I feel like this would be a favorite with kids, adults, whoever.
Yeah.
And perfect for cold weather, which we
excellent for cold weather.
It is upon us. Okay. Tell us your best prep tip when you're preparing for a crowd. Where do you get cooking inspiration? I mean, after years of cooking, I'm sure you have a backup of an arsenal of recipes, but what are some of your favorite places to find recipes?
I do keep a good shelf of cookbooks. And one of the things that I did as a young wife that was pretty smart was I got a 2-year subscription to Taste of Home magazine, which back in its earliest days, which I don't know how long ago that was. Yes. But there was Taste of Home, and they had quick cooking for two. There were several different offshoot magazines.
As internet was just beginning. There were no blogs or food blogs.
No.
I don't even know if YouTube existed. It was very
not
early.
When I bought Taste of Home. But I got a 2-year subscription, and it covered so many wonderful tips and recipes and techniques, and it's just basic food. And if you are a young cook just starting out, there's nothing, you could doll it up and make it gourmet, but it is just good, solid American food, supplies available at any grocery store. You don't have to get too specialty about it. The instructions have all been excellent, and I still go back to Taste of Home magazine. A lot of my recipes are still from Taste of Home.
Do they publish a magazine still? I'm not sure.
They publish special magazines. For instance, like I've purchased their supplemental magazines on canning and church suppers. They have a set that they have published for diabetic recipes. Oh. And I really like I'm not diabetic, but making some of those changes is really a good idea. And it's still very basic cooking, and you can work with those recipes. They have an extensive website.
Yes.
And all of the recipes that I have used from the magazine are on the website now, so I can look one up quickly if I'm at the grocery store and say, I want to do cherry Coke salad, but I don't remember.
Cherry Coke salad?
Oh, now, yeah, that's a good one too. You do.
I have not heard of cherry Coke salad.
It's a Jell-O.
Okay.
And it's yummy.
It's delicious?
Yes,
okay.
It is.
What about shopping? When you shop for a crowd, what is your tip for shopping?
Well, my basic tip for shopping actually bleeds over into the planning stage. I keep a calendar page. I just printed off a blank calendar page, and I've planned all my recipes that I'm going to use for fall. And it's a 5-week plan, and I have the name of the recipe and the book and page number it comes from. So I know exactly how to find it. And then the second calendar grid hangs on the door, with the pantry door with it, and it's the grocery list. So when I am planning out a week of menus and a week of what's for dinner, I can write it up on my whiteboard, my calendar whiteboard for dinner, and then the grocery list is right there. And I can decide if we want to do pork chops this week, or we're just not feeling pork chops this week, or we bought something else that needs to be finished up. You can sub those recipes in and out, and it really helps for planning with a large group. The other thing I like to do for a large group is to create a timeline in my on a sheet of paper that I keep in the kitchen. So I know exactly what I'm serving, when it needs to start, what the oven temperature is or the timing, and it lets me know what I can need to do ahead of time. Like set out the butter. I can get my relish trays ready to go. I can make sure I have pot holders ready, etc.
You're not missing
for
something
everything.
At the last minute.
Trying to keep from panicking at the last minute.
Right.
Because we're all good teachers at Logos, and we know that we never
panic.
That's right. So that's what we want to keep track of. And I find that's very helpful, especially now that I have daughter-in-laws who are helping out, and I can designate, okay, we're going to do mashed potatoes, and Chantel's going to mash them.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
They can look at your list and not have to ask every time there's a new task that they're finished and they want a new task. They can glance at your list and
exactly.
just go.
Exactly.
Well, that would help from forgetting something. I have opened the microwave before after guests have left and discovered something.
Oh,
I don't
who
remember
hasn't?
What, but I was just...
I knew I was forgetting something.
This.
Right.
Just a last minute reheat or something. I don't know what it was, but that would help a lot.
Yes.
You said it was a 5-week plan. Do you say it's for fall? Do you do 5 weeks and then repeat the 5 weeks?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
just sub
after
in,
Christmas, we go to the winter.
To a winter menu.
Yeah.
And then you just sub in, if you wanted to do something new, for instance,
right.
You would just take away one of those recipes and sub something else
exactly.
in. Okay.
Exactly.
That's a great idea to have it pre-thought out, because sometimes your brain is just fried and you don't want to have to come up with an entire week or two worth of menus. If you just have them there, just tried and true, just go with
really
those.
helps.
If you have no other inspiration, go with those. What about cleaning? Tell us your best cleaning tip when either guests are coming or they're leaving.
My best cleaning tip comes from a church elder's wife in Florida, and she had a beautiful home on a lake, and they were some of the most hospitable people I've ever met. They had Bible studies, they had craft groups, they had men's, ladies, everything, and they would always meet at her house. And we did ask her one of her secrets of success on that, and she said, make sure your bathrooms are pristine, make sure your kitchen is clean, spot clean any other areas where guests will be, and then clean thoroughly when they're gone. She just didn't take a lot of time. She didn't deep clean before an event. She said as soon as everybody's there, nobody notices, but as long as the bathroom is pristine and the kitchen is very clean for using and serving food.
Eye level. They're looking out and around. They're not usually, hopefully, inspecting the floors and under the couch.
Thoroughly clean everything after they're gone, and you've got a clean house, and you're not quite as tired as cleaning it on both ends. That
makes a lot of sense. And then if you do it afterwards, you're really ready for the next event.
You are.
But again, for the next event, you just kind of spot clean because you've already done your deep cleaning.
Exactly.
A few days later, if you need to spot clean or really clean the bathroom, that's one thing versus the whole thing.
Exactly.
That's a great idea.
I've enjoyed it.
I will have to adopt it. All right. What is your best advice for showing warm hospitality to guests coming into your home?
My best advice is never run out of food. Which happened to me only once. Only once.
Were you horrified?
Yes. It was Easter. We were in Florida. The Navy does not recognize Good Friday and Easter as holidays for training purposes. And so our guys who were in school all those years ago had to go to school on Good Friday. And for Christian guys, that's tough because Easter's a big holiday in a lot of families. They couldn't go home. They had to stay. So we always made sure we had a big Easter dinner for all the guys who needed to stay. And they went through a 20-pound turkey. That was my first turkey ever. And they went through a 20-pound turkey and a 15-pound ham and leftovers and nachos. And we had side dishes and everything. And they just kind of hung around and they stayed. And we pulled out taco chips and nachos, and I cut up apples and made dip. I was just throwing anything I could find in the pantry at them. And I swore that was never going to happen again.
Well, you know.
But we made it through.
You made it through.
And they were guys that would eat anything.
Exactly. And, you know, depending on your numbers, a 20-pound turkey and what you like a 15-pound ham or 10-pound
huge.
Who would imagine? They had been saving up their appetite.
I think so.
But also, you know, if they hang around, they're having a great time. Well, that was an indication they were really enjoying your house and your hospitality, your fellowship. But if they're hanging around and talking, playing games, they're going to get hungry again.
They are.
But you didn't really plan for 2 meals. So a meal and snacks, I think you pulled it off really well.
I think so. No big complaints there. But it did make me realize I need to over-plan. And that way, if something does go wrong, what if your turkey doesn't quite get done in time? You've got other food or you've got some backup plan. And you can always eat the leftovers yourself, or you can pack them up and send them home with people that you know would benefit from that.
That's a great idea, and I think it's a great idea to have a frozen meal in your freezer. I don't always do that, but I did that around the holidays last year, and a similar thing happened to me. A couple of extra guests came that I didn't know were coming, which is totally fine. But I realized I'm spreading out what we were serving a little bit too thin, so I pulled out some frozen. I think that I called them Southwest burritos. They were kind of a quick, we can heat these in the microwave and it's extra for if anybody wants a second.
Yes.
I just pretended it was part of the meal, hoping they didn't realize that, you know, dish A did not really complement dish B.
Exactly.
It was kind of an odd combination, but it worked out. And I definitely had people going for the Southwest burritos. So I thought to myself, wow, I should have something I can pull out just in case. But I also had that thought of like, ooh, I better make sure we have plenty of food.
Yes.
But sometimes people are just extra hungry and you do think you're having plenty and you just don't anticipate quite well enough.
I thought I had planned well enough, but that one...
Sometimes everyone's on a growth spurt.
Exactly.
You're like, wow. Everyone showed up with hollow legs. All right, what is your must-have kitchen item?
Well, right now, we're in the middle of apple season here on the day we're recording this, and I have been really appreciating my apple peeler corer gadget gizmo. I'm on my second one. I bought my first one from Pampered Chef, and I got my second one at Goodwill. So, but there are stores in town. You can get it on Amazon for under $20, and you stab the apple and you crank the handle and it peels, slices, and cores your apple, and it makes everything so fast.
So what recipes do you use it for? Like apple pie?
I use it for anything involving apples.
Okay.
So at our home we have 6 apple trees.
Oh, wow.
And this is their year to produce in abundance. So trying to put my apple pie mix in the freezer. So I've got about 7 apple pie, apple crisp mixes in the freezer.
Speaking of being prepared for company.
Yeah, that's a handy one too. Because everybody loves the smell of apple crisp baking.
On Sunday
hey,
she won't know. You know, I'll
come
test
on
her.
over. Come on over.
Oh, you have an extra guest.
Yes.
Pull out the extra apple pie.
There you go. And I've been making applesauce because now we've got a lot of
great idea.
toddler grandchildren that eat applesauce. And I've been making it in the Instant Pot. And I can make, it takes longer to boil the water for my jars than it does to cook it in
Do you
the
use
Instant
the
Pot.
pressure setting, the pressure cooker?
Yes. I consulted several recipes online, and for my 8-quart cooker, I let it cook for 10 minutes. There was a 6-quart, the recipe for 6-quart Instant Pot was for 2.5 to 3 pounds of apples, cook it for 5 minutes, natural release for 5 minutes, and then use a blender or an immersion blender to get it to the consistency you want. But I have an 8-quart, so I usually have to expand my time a little more. So I went 10 minutes and I let it natural release for 10, and I used a slotted spoon to mash them.
Nice.
They were so
and it was perfect.
tender, and they were hot. So the fruit is hot, the jars are hot. It was really easy to process. So my apple peeler core and my Instant Pot combination are getting us through applesauce season.
Wow. 2 questions. Does your apple core, does it clamp on something?
This one has a suction, and it attaches to the countertop.
Okay.
Which I really like. My first one had the clamp, and my countertops were too wide, and I had to do it on a bar stool.
Oh, wow. And that's
On a
not
chair
quite where
that
you
was a
want
bar
to do
stool.
it.
Right. That wiggled a little. So you had to hold it down and crank. But it worked.
It worked.
I had a system. It worked. But when that
if you're doing
apple
a
core
lot of
died,
apples.
we went with the suction system. And it's good. You still have to hold it down, and you have to resuction it every once in a while, but that's okay. That's doable.
Second question, and there may be an easy recipe online, but with your Instapot or Instant Pot, do you do a certain amount of water with apples, or do you just put the apples in there?
Actually, the recipes that I looked at, all of them recommended a 1/4 cup of lemon juice just to keep your apples from turning color.
Turning brown.
And they said not to add extra water because as soon as heat is applied to the apples, they break down.
Yes.
And they are moisture. It's a moisture heavy recipe. And so you don't have to add any extra water, which I thought was wonderful. And then they also advised against doing an actual release, a manual release right away because there's so much moisture in the pot. One gal said it will look like a volcano spouting. And I was like, okay, don't need to clean up any volcanoes today. So I just let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes and then finish the release, and it's not too bad.
That makes sense because when you eat an apple, they're full of juice.
Yes.
Or if you've ever gone to an apple orchard, you can juice the apples. So they do have a lot of liquid in there. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you ever add anything like cinnamon, or do you wait and let the kids do that at the later when, because some people do cinnamon applesauce,
Right.
but do you just do it on the...
I did a batch that
taste?
includes cinnamon and allspice and brown sugar, which was really yummy.
That was a hit.
That
I
was.
bet.
Well, the kids, some of them liked it and some of them didn't. But, we all have our flavors of
Right.
applesauce.
And
so
just
I'm trying to do a little
unsweetened
bit.
is really delicious, I think, just the plain
Yeah.
flavor of the apples. But homemade applesauce would just, that would be a lot better than the store-bought.
Oh, the first batch I did, I mixed it. I decided to whir it up in my Vitamix, and it turned into puree in 2 minutes. And I was like, okay, that was a little more like baby food than we were looking for. But I can see how it would be really good for like apple butter, because it would be really smooth consistency. But we decided that was not the correct texture for applesauce at our house. So
and the kids would be sure to let you know as well.
Yes.
They're very opinionated when they're toddlers.
They are. They are. That doesn't look like applesauce,
Right.
Mama.
And they're very afraid to taste it if it looks any different than the thing they've been eating for
Exactly.
every other time they've come over to your house.
Right.
Do you have a funny story for us?
I have a funny story.
I am looking forward
Yes,
to this
is-
maybe more than the other. Although that menu looks really good. I'm ready to try that chili and cornbread. But do tell us about your story.
Okay. So in providing hospitality here in this community, we have enjoyed having students from New St. Andrews in our home on a regular basis over the course of the 23 years we've been here. And we became very attached to the first class that we interacted with. One of the girls was boarding with us, and we had them to our house quite often for different events. And the classes were much smaller then, but still, it was a good size group. And college students, and you're feeding a lot of guys in that batch. And the word had gone out amongst the students that maybe the gentlemen were not quite so polite when they were invited to homes, and maybe they were just eating a little more than they should. And so the word went out that the gentleman should plan to eat a polite plate of food and just let that be what they enjoyed, so as not to offend the hostess by eating like a pig, so to speak.
So someone was trying to teach manners.
Exactly. And I think that's a great idea. Teaching manners is just fine. But when they got to my house, and I was fully prepared with all of this food, and I'd had them at my house for a couple different events, I knew what they would eat, I knew how much, etc., and nobody was eating. The guys ate their one plate and no
they
more.
Just sat there.
And I didn't understand.
Right.
And I was
like, what's wrong with my cooking?
What's wrong? Did I oversalt something? Is it not cooked right? I was taste testing. I was talking to people. And finally, one of the guys could see I was really upset that the guys weren't eating. And he finally said, okay, look, Mrs. Courtney, we were warned to eat a polite plate only and not offend the hostess. And I said, oh, well, gentlemen, I think that's a wonderful idea. So let me inform you that this hostess is only offended by leftovers. There's a stack of plates in the kitchen. Go do your duty. And they were very excited to get seconds.
They were very excited to go do their duty.
They did a good job. They cleaned everything up just fine. And I understand the thought that the teachers were trying to get across, and I appreciate that. But that's come down in our family as standard instructions. The hostess is only offended by leftovers.
Yes.
Still a common phrase.
Yes, that's actually a great phrase, and I would agree with it. I think when I've taught my boys, it's been, the first part is make a modest plate or a reasonable plate until everyone has gone through.
Right.
You know, especially if there's, if you're going to someone's house and there's a really prized dish, don't go and scoop half of it on your plate.
Right.
Let everybody get some of that.
Exactly.
And then once everybody's gone through the line, if you have some favorites or if you're hungry for seconds, then dive back in. But yes, you've got to teach one with the other. Otherwise, hostesses will be offended because they also do not want, I don't know, an entire pot of chili left, even if it does freeze well.
Right.
You want it to be gone, or at least most of it. That's a great story. And I'm sure the boys were just relieved. They weren't hungry anymore.
They were very grateful. They said, oh, it was so good. Yes. We were just trying to follow the rules. Well, I said, you have new rules at my house.
New rules. Well, and college boys, they're probably not cooking for themselves most every night.
Or not cooking well.
Or
anyway,
not cooking well.
Exactly.
They might be heating up some quick little item, or surely not ramen noodles, but they might have branched out into ramen noodles.
Ramen and spaghetti is very popular amongst those single college guys.
Yes, my husband would talk about making spaghetti in college and eating it for an entire week.
Yes.
Because I guess that's what he knew how to make. Maybe a couple other things, but it's like, well, if you cook, you're cooking once so that it lasts. How in the world a person eats the same thing every night for dinner for a week is beyond me. But college guys, to get out of cooking and dishes every night, they're going to make that pot of spaghetti and really be hoping you don't make spaghetti when they show up.
Exactly.
What about dessert? What do you serve for? You mentioned cookies when you mentioned your menu. Do you have a favorite?
Well, the favorite cookie at my house is just a good old chocolate chip cookie. But we also have a cake recipe that we like. It's called Death by Chocolate.
Oh,
this is from Dom DeLuise. Dom DeLuise, before he passed away, he was enjoying a sideline career as a cook and chef. And
who is Dom DeLuise?
He's a comedian.
Okay.
From evidently older than you, Bess.
Okay. Well, the name sounded familiar.
Yeah.
I'm like,
no, he's
I've
a comedian,
this name, but I can't remember who he is.
He's a comedian of interesting content.
Okay.
So maybe don't go look him up and
but look up his recipe.
But his recipes are good.
Chip.
Yes.
No, it was Death by Chocolate.
It was called Death by Chocolate. It's a chocolate cake, and it's got chocolate pudding, chocolate chips, and it uses a basic chocolate cake mix. Plus, it's got sour cream in it. Ooh. So it is rich and lovely and
easy to make. Sounds
it is. It's very easy to make. You put it in a bundt pan. Throw it together, put it in a bundt pan. It bakes well. I've never had to freeze the leftovers. There aren't many.
There aren't leftovers.
But it goes great with ice cream. There was also a recipe for a Grand Marché. I think I'm saying it right. Ganache.
Okay.
You can put on it or any flavor of ganache there.
Oh,
so
that sounds amazing. Okay, we'll have to look this up.
It's a good one.
Well, especially if you don't have any leftovers, that's one to remember.
That's nice. It is nice.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join me. I am so excited to share both of these, make multiple recipes. I have the chili cornbread and now a dessert as well. And her favorite kitchen item, you can find it all on comeoverfordinner.com. And what else? Seems like I had one other tip. Oh, be sure, one of my sisters was telling me, I was saying, well, I don't know how to get the word out. I'm new to this and I'm not great at marketing and all of that. I do not have a degree in marketing, but she said, tell them to rate and review your podcast.
There you go.
So I need to figure out how to do that myself. Well, where do you do that? Maybe where you listen to podcasts. So rate and review and share it with a friend. Thank you. Bye.